At least 190 people have died since Cyclone Freddy battered parts of Malawi. About 14 deaths have also been recorded in Mozambique and Madagascar. The full extent of the damage and loss of lives is yet to be determined, as dozens of people are missing and scores injured. Cyclone Freddy has displaced thousands of residents in affected countries, and now Malawi has declared a state of emergency, as officials warn the number of fatalities could rise. The mega-tropical storm made landfall in Africa for the second time in a month on Saturday night, causing widespread destruction. This cyclone has broken records for gathering momentum after weakening several times. It is also on track to become the longest ever recorded tropical cyclone and has generated the highest ever recorded accumulated energy for a storm, which is a measure of the total amount of energy that a cyclone has released over a certain period of time. Malawian officials expect the storm to wane starting today, Wednesday. So let's find out if that has happened and if there's a chance of knowing the full extent of the damage. I am Kemini Amanor and you're welcome to the square. Joining our gathering now are Benjamin Kaneka. He is senior lecturer population studies at the University of Malawi. He's joining us from Zomba, one of the places hard hit by the storm. We also have Maziko Hisbon, Matemba. He is a health activist and executive director for the Health and Rights Education Program. He's joining us from Blantyre, Malawi. Maziko has been to some of the communities that have been affected by this. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the square.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, before we continue our conversation, I want us to listen to some residents who have been directly affected by this. Let's take a listen, we'll come back.
We are seeing here it's a crisis. So far we are talking about 122 people that we have confirmed that they have lost their lives, but quite a number of them that are missing. And this demands that all of us come in and support. People have been displaced, thousands and thousands, in all the 10 districts.
Masana palanchi amene kwabwera mvula yochuluka kwambiri imene kuphiriku monga amene anthu akuonera kwaphulika madzi ochuluka kuti napolo ndi amene wachoka kumeneko ndewo asesa anthu ochuluka akuphatikizapo so bambo anga amene ndikunenawo ndi mchemwali ndi ana awiri munjira kozona kuti ku family kwathu anthu folo akusowa ndipo akwiririka pa ngozi imene.
Let's come back to our conversation now. And I want to start with you, Benjamin. You're in Zomba. Zomba is one of the areas that's been battered and pummeled by Cyclone Freddy. Talk to us about how you're coping.
We are coping, and there's some support coming in. But let me hasten to add that the extent of the damage is yet to be established, since it has been continuously learning, and there is no time to really check the extent of the damage. But let me reiterate that at this point in time, the newest information is telling us that it's now 225 people who have died from the
in Malawi alone?
Yes, in Malawi alone. And the toll is still counting, it's still rising, because a lot of people are still missing, and the rescue operations are hampered by the bad weather that is still continuing. From where I am speaking, I think it's better today, especially this afternoon, because the wind has eased out, and then the rains have also not necessarily stopped, but at least better than yesterday. So
I see. We'll talk about the difference between what you have experienced in the prior days and now. But let me move on to Maziko now. Maziko, I know that you visited a few areas. Before we get into what you found us, talk to us about the situation today. How is it looking today?
Yes, today, as Benjamin has mentioned, I think there's a little bit of improvement, even though the rains keep on coming and stopping, but not as it was the past 2 days, because the past 2 days has been the worst, which you can never imagine. Because for me, I can recollect that it was on Saturday, when the rain started, and we thought it was a normal rain, which we normally have. And fortunately, our weathermen already indicated of this challenge, I think a week ago. And as you know, we're used that this rain comes in a few hours, then it stops. Then we discovered that it was Saturday, then Sunday, then Monday. Then early in the morning on Monday, when I saw that pouring rain, then I called the district health office just to find out the situation on the ground. And they said the situation doesn't look good. And then I had to leave, and I went to the hospital. Our Queensland River Central Hospital is our major referral hospital in Blantyre. When I arrived in the hospital, that's when I found a lot of ambulances coming in with sirens. And when I went around, they said most of those were dead bodies. There were very few people who were coming alive. It was like it was like a place where a lot of people were coming already dead. So I said, where is it coming from? They said, no, it's coming one part of Blantyre. Then I called the district health office, Dr. Kawarazira, and they said, no, I'm in the office, but now I'm rushing. I'm going to Chirobwe. Chirobwe is one of the townships within Blantyre. So I said, can we meet at the site? So I left immediately going to the site. When I went out the site, that's when I saw the real thing now to say this is something else.
I see. So paint us a picture. You have told us a few of the places that you went, Maziko. Paint us a picture of what you saw as far as the destruction is concerned.
When I see a lot of dilapidated building coming down. The water was coming and stopped for the place because people were also confused because people were not sure what is happening. So it was like finding out what is going on. And, we are not prepared as a country that we normally see this happening in my country. So it was like maybe, yes, they heard about the cyclone, but they didn't know that it can be gone this far. When we went uphill, that is in one side which I went, and we found out that there were dead bodies and the people could find their loved ones. And people were rushing up and down. Red Cross was there, Ministry of Health, the district health office was around, the police, and we saw the army keep on coming. Then when we saw that the ministers of health, finance, local government, and the minister of water, they were coming to the same site because I think they indicated, they were given an indication that things are not looking good. So yes, the situation was not looking good, and one of our greatest fear was that it is a populous area within Blantyre, and most of the houses are built with the fences, brick fence, and the fear was some of these brick fences will fall off because the rain has been raining for almost 2 days. So it was scaring looking at the dilapidated place, but also looking at the water which is coming from the mountain coming down. But what I saw with my eyes were funerals, not funeral per se, but dead bodies. People were picked their loved ones into the vehicles, and other people were crying because they couldn't find their loved ones. Some children were missing. As of that day, what I get the information was, and I think what Benjamin has mentioned, that now we have 225. At that spot, I was told that there were about 19 children who were found dead, and 45 were adults.
Very well. Are these official numbers, Maziko?
Yes, because they came from the hospital, and the numbers are keep on growing, as what Benjamin has mentioned. But at that moment in time, that was only for Blantyre.
Very well.
But as you know, this has happened also other districts.
Indeed, indeed. And that's why I want to move on to Benjamin. Now, Benjamin, you are in Zomba. You are also in the heart of the storm. Describe what you have seen about how, your community is being pummeled by the storm or has been pummeled by the storm.
I must highlight the fact that the situation is very bad, and where I had visited, it's the southern part of the district near Lake Chirwa, the second largest lake in Malawi. A lot of water has been going towards the lake using the rivers, so all that area is flooded now. And just before I came here, I was also talking to some colleagues who are right down in there near the Lake Chirwa, where it is the hardest hit. But also let me mention that the people who have been displaced by this cyclone, can run up to 100,000, not 19,000, because it has affected 10 districts, and perhaps 19,000 is only for Blantyre City. But we have to know that Blantyre Rural has also been affected, and 9 more other districts, including the district where I am. And my estimation for Zomba alone should be close to 6,000 people who have been displaced by this cyclone. So the magnitude is very huge, and the injuries are many, but also the deaths, as we have said, is 225 official figures as at the moment. And the damage to property and infrastructure is also very big. And the road from Zomba to the capital city of Lilongwe is cut somewhere because of the heavy rains have destroyed the bridges. So it's a very high cost in both humans and also the infrastructure. It's a very, very huge cost.
So let's talk about this cost and what kind of assistance you're getting so far. Benjamin, what would you say? How is the relief process going? How are they reaching people who are affected by the storm?
At the moment, where I am, relief hasn't started coming in yet. I think the concentration has been in Blantyre City, where it has been the hardest hit. But the basic things are the ones that are needed: immediate food, some clothing, and also some sanitary kind of facilities, especially in evacuation camps where people are residing at the moment. So the situation is really dire, and the government is responding, but also other non-government organizations are responding. But in times like this, there isn't enough, and especially for a country that is already struggling from other issues such as the COVID-19 cholera epidemic, and also we had also some problems with last year we had another cyclone, Anna, which we haven't recovered yet. So it's an accumulation of issues after issues, and it's really a very, very bad situation for the country.
Very well. Maziko, what would you say as far as, the relief process is concerned, sending relief to people, reaching out to people to help them, alleviate their pain with regards to the storm? How is it going in Blantyre?
Yes, first of all, as Benjamin has mentioned, we have all the ministers. In fact, I'm told that the president will be in Blantyre this afternoon. But I had the opportunity to talk with the Minister of Finance because it's part of the rescue team in Blantyre this morning. And I was asking him about the same question which you came in and just asked me, that how's the responses like? And he said he's trying to get more resources from partners, and government has allocated about 1.6 billion, that's the Malawian currency, Malawi kwacha. But other relief items are coming from other stakeholders, but also others are pledging to come out with the relief. As mentioned, yes, we have some relief because people have been moved to shelters within Blantyre, like in schools, where they're giving food and others. But let me recall that when I went to the Queen's Elizabeth Central Hospital, I was told that some health workers, they work almost for a day or two without having food. So they were calling for food for our health workers who are supporting the injured in the hospitals. But also, I have received a report from the Secretary for Health on how the infrastructure has been damaged from different hospitals within the cyclone area. I was given that, for example, for Neno district, 4 facilities are inaccessible, and in Chikwawa, it's another district, 2 facilities are inaccessible, and the bridge for Misel 4 bridge has been damaged. In Sanje, no access to M1 heavy facilities due to road washed away off by outreach. In Mulanje, about 3 facilities are inaccessible. In Palombe, about 4 health centers are not accessible. In Blantyre, not many infrastructure are damaged, but a huge influx of patients and the dead who have been taken to those. And above all those issues of human resource, the acute staff in most of the facilities, and logistics in terms of supplies, some centers have lost all the supplies because of washing away. And due to referral of patients to certain accessible facilities, there's a critical shortage of supplies. And power outage is an issue, calling for urgent supply of fuel and transportation. And sadly, there is no running water in some of the health facilities due to the power outage. And for example, Blantyre district greatly affected, as it has been reported. And a total number of 119 people were brought dead on arrival at Queen's Cemetery Hospital. And the Queen's is seeing about 404,000 adults. Admission, 25 men and 57 women, 3 pregnant women. In total, number of children seen so far is 76 and 1 dead at the hospital. So this is just an update, which the Secretary for Health, because I was asking this information. I had an opportunity to talk to the Minister of Health, but also the Minister of Finance, who's trying to lobby the World Bank and other partners to support the initiative. But so far, we have seen the coming in of other UN agencies in Blantyre, like the UN Women, the UNICEF, UNFPA, WHO, UNAIDS, and others that are in town. But in terms of the actual, as Benjamin mentioned, that the actual assessment of the damage and how much is required, I think they are still doing the assessment.
Indeed, that will take time. So, Benjamin, let's talk about these communities that have been cut off because of the floods. You mentioned earlier that one of such is in the Zomba district. And so talk to us about how that is challenging rescue and recovery efforts, and how rescuers could go around that. What could be the solution to that?
I think what is hampering rescue missions is the fact that the rains are continuing and the visibility is very poor, even if we were to use aircrafts to helicopters to check. But what I can say at the moment is that people have moved to higher grounds. They are occupying schools, churches, or any building that can withstand the calamity that we are undergoing. So I think what is immediate is for people to get some food, some clothing, some bedding, because they have their houses have been demolished and they have lost everything. So they really need immediate support, and I am hoping that by this time something has been done. As I said, I talked to somebody around 12 midday that they are still waiting for some relief, and I'm very sure that some who are concentrating in Blantyre might also need to move on to other districts which are hardest to hit, like Palombe, Mulanje, Nsanje Chikwawa, but also Zomba.
Are people at risk of being left to their fates because rescue missions cannot reach them as a result of the flood?
I don't think it will continue in that way, because even in the hardest hit areas in Blantyre, they have been reached out. In rescue missions from the military, from the police, from the International Red Cross and others, they have their own way of rescuing people. So I'm very hopeful that today something good is going to happen. What is needed is to move them from the danger zones and then move them to an upland place where they can easily be reached now with relief items.
Indeed, Maziko, I want us to talk about the pressures that this could put on the health system that was already reeling, and the cholera outbreak. How would you describe that pressure? How are the health facilities dealing with the pressures that are coming in as a result of the flood?
Yes, indeed, coming. One of the scariest things which I was so scared when I saw it coming was issues of the emergency which I've had, and the cholera being the picture. And when I called the minister, I think it was on Sunday, just to find out, and already she has already started from the long way coming to say, how are you going to manage this crisis? I mean, it's all this challenge which I've had, more especially on cholera, which is not an NDA at the moment. We're still having the challenge with cholera. And when I went to those sites, one of the scariest things was how is the water sources in those areas, because already all the water is contaminated with all the things we have seen in the pictures, that the water is contaminated with a lot of things, and everywhere things are contaminated. But also our water boards are not functioning because the electricity has been cut because of the hydro. Because we use hydro, we don't use solar much or the other mode of electricity. So the electricity is already cut, and they are sparing a little bit of electricity because there's a lot of mud in our water source at the hydro station. So there are very few which water. So we are having water electricity cut, which our water board also experiences such. So yes, we can see that now. Maybe we cannot see because we are overwhelmed with a rescue mission. But I think in the coming days, today and tomorrow, that's when we are going to see it happening, because the people have been moved to these safe places in schools and other catchment areas for safety. So that's where we need to make sure. That's why at the moment I was mobilizing my civil society and my other groups, but also the other colleagues, to make sure that how can they mobilize themselves to volunteer and be able. I know that Red Cross is doing a lot of work, but they're overwhelmed. The figures you have seen, they're huge. 19,000 is huge figures. And seeing the people who have died so far, I think there's a lot of work that everyone has to be involved to make sure that this is happening. And also, when I was talking with the Minister of Finance, he was worried that his fiscal space for the budget, because he just presented the budgets like a week ago, and already had a lot of deficit in the budget to implement this new budget. So he's also saying, what am I going to do now, since already I've exhausted whatever I had, and now I'm having this crisis. So we might have this in time, and I'm hoping the development partners, the ones who are supporting Malawi, looking at this crisis for speedy recovery from the measures like cholera, COVID, and polio. I think something needs to be done. More especially for me, one of the things which I want to urge was that the coming in of vaccines, because as you know, in these spaces where you have seen there's a lot of contamination and the water is not safe. And also last week, I had a meeting with the other groups in the central region. I found out that most of the water is contaminated for different reasons, because of the prolonged rainfall which has happened, because people use shallow waves. So already we had this problem. So this is prolonged because of this. So it's a sudden situation, and I'm hoping that partners will help, technicians will help to make sure that people are safe.
We'll talk a bit more about, what challenges there could be once the storm passes. But Benjamin, talk to us about your community. Well, this may not have happened in your community, but we've seen videos of people digging with their bare hands trying to get people. We've seen them use shovels, try to get the mud off, the ground so they can reach people there. We've seen people who are not particularly trained rescuers who are helping the trained rescuers to dig out people and rescue people or recover bodies. How would you rate the government's performance in rescuing and recovering, in this entire process?
You know that the challenge is very enormous, and every hand that can assist in whatever way is welcome in this particular instance. Coming back to your question, my only worry is that perhaps as a country, the government, particularly as a leading agency, we did not foresee the magnitude of the damage or devastation that was going to happen. Of course, our meteorological department has been warning about Cyclone Freddy, perhaps for the past 10 days. But perhaps we underestimated the devastation that would come forth, because otherwise we would have really prepared better than how we have responded. I am thinking that perhaps government would have already deployed the rescue teams in areas that are prone to this, because this is not the first time. Yeah, we have had the cyclone, and we know exactly which districts are affected. Perhaps we would have been more prepared, sending rescue teams on standby in those districts should anything happen. But I have seen that we have been reactive, and to me that has been a problem. But
so Benjamin, would you say that at the moment you know, the Malawian government is well equipped for this rescue process, or it would need some assistance?
Oh no, the assistance is required because as I've said, the devastation is very huge in magnitude. So the government is trying its best, but also there are so many other partners that are coming in. I have spoken about the International Red Cross and the local Red Cross Society who have been on it throughout, and there are a lot of private sector allies that are also pumping in some money. They are private citizens. So the problem is very big, and the government alone cannot afford. That's why even the head of state and the other government officials have been calling upon cooperating partners and other well-wishers to assist the government so that it can do the immediate relief that is needed, but also for the long-term recovery, because the damage is very huge and it can derail the whole budget. Yes.
All right, so gentlemen, when we come back, I want us to just talk a little bit more about why you think that the warnings were not heeded too, and it would appear that the entire country, not just the government, was unprepared for what was to come with Cyclone Freddy. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we're tracking the tropical storm sweeping across some countries on the southern part of the continent, Malawi being the hardest hit. At least 225 people, we are learning now, have died as a result of the thousands of people displaced and many more missing. With me here are Maziko, Hisbon, Matemba. He's a health activist. And then we also have Benjamin Kaneka, who is a senior lecturer of population studies at the University of Malawi. Gentlemen, I appreciate your company here. Maziko, let's move on with the conversation. Why do you think that it would appear that Cyclone Freddy, despite all the warnings, hits Malawi and in fact a lot of the other countries in that region by surprise?
It's sudden indeed. In fact, one of the things which I was asking myself, our meteorological department has been very fair because they have this warning like a week or two, just warning. But I think, as I said earlier, people were taking this as normal measure, weathermen telling us about the weather and all those. Because I think in our Department of Disaster, I think that's another area as a learning point moving for the future, that they need to tell people how to describe the certain messages which is coming from our weathermen. Because I'll give an example. For example, when I went to Queensland Central Hospital, this is our central hospital, the major one which is taking most of the injured through this crisis. He said once he got that message, he already assembled a team within the hospital, like emergency team of doctors, so that they can take those people who are injured if indeed this come to pass. That was a week ago. That's what he was telling me yesterday when I met him in his office. And I said, wow. Does anyone did the same? I said, even when he went to the meetings with those colleagues, others were doubting if indeed what was given in, but he trusted what was coming. So the issues was how people, maybe it's not unique for Malawi, maybe other countries also might have the same challenge, that when you have all these, for example, cyclone, this is not the first time, as Benjamin has also mentioned, that it has happened almost, we had Cyclone Anna, but also we had another cyclone at the year before this one. It means it has been kind of like a year or two occurrence. But this one is the longest, as you mentioned in your preamble, but also the hardest. So the issue might be how the citizens are they're able to describe the information which you are getting on this weather. So it's an issue where communities and are moving forward, they need to be oriented or to raise awareness on how they can prepare themselves. For example, I'll give you this example that the council, that is in Blantyre, because that's where I was very close with, already the council went around warning people to move away from high end and come to places for safety. That was, I think, before cyclone. That was last week. But nobody moved. And but also maybe it's a lack of enforcement, because even though they were going around, it was just a mayor telling people to move to safety places.
Well, let me hear from Benjamin. Benjamin, do you think this is a case of a problem with communication, or perhaps it's just the unpredictability of nature?
I think it's both. As Maziko has put it, there have been warnings. I think the Meteorological Department has really tried its best to be showing us how Cyclone Freddy is moving from Indian Ocean, entering Mauritania, Madagascar, and then later on Mozambique. We were all having that. But as he has said, nobody anticipated the magnitude. And also, there were certain people who were helpless. Okay, cyclone is coming, but we have nowhere to go. Or we have nothing, there's nothing that we can do. Because even if you say move, where are we going to move to? These are only our places where we stay. And I think, as Maziko said, we were undermining the power of science, because the Meteorological Department people were really telling us scientific information about what is going to happen. But I think we underestimated, maybe comparing with our experience with the Cyclone Gombe, which was not serious. So they were saying, maybe it may not hit hard as it has done. But I believe that as a country now moving forward, we should take science seriously. And any warnings that are coming in should be taken seriously, both by the citizenry, but also the duty bearers. As I said earlier on, I think we would have prepared better for a response. We would have evacuation teams spread all over the districts, the army, the police, just waiting in case something happens. As what Dr. Kawalazir had done for Blantyre, just preparing the nurses and doctors for any eventuality. That would have been a national kind of response. Yes.
I see. But again, I want us to understand this, and perhaps you can help us, Benjamin. The cyclone hit Mozambique and Madagascar, like you said. However, it's Malawi that appears to have lost the highest number of people to the floods that came along with it. What is it about the topography, perhaps, of Malawi, or even the positioning of Malawi in the way of the storm that you think may have contributed to this?
I may not be very competent to comment on. It's a specialized field of geography, which I'm not in, an authority. But what I can say is that I think for Madagascar, it just passed maybe a day or two. Then Mozambique the same, but it appears that it has taken its roots within Malawi, and also we have so many rivers and so many sources of heavy kind of waves of water that can come from. So it might be a topography kind of thing, but also the way our country is positioned. But I may not really necessarily have an authority to speak on what exactly has happened. But all I know is that it has hit us hardest in terms of volume and also in terms of intensity, far much worse than our two other neighbors, our two other countries like Madagascar and Mozambique.
I see. Maziko, do you want to take a dig at this and perhaps also share with us why you think that Freddy was very different from the earlier cyclones?
Yes, I think what Benjamin has ably explained, even though he didn't want to go deep into the geography and the science, but I think maybe I'm just assuming that we are just unfortunate because, yes, in Malawi it stayed longer, which I believe maybe as we go on the days passing by, our scientists in that area, the way to describe it, to tell us why it stayed longer in Malawi than not in Mozambique and not in Madagascar. So that in future, when preparing for this could be our starting point as a country, so that we can prepare better in terms of once we receive those messages. Because as Benjamin has said, but also I mentioned earlier, our preparedness was just to give messages without enforcing anything, because we thought maybe it would be just a few days and after some hours, it go out and go to another country. But sadly, it stayed longer in Malawi and caused that huge damage. It's an issue which we need to look into because, as I mentioned, this is not the first cyclone. We have Gombe, we had Anne, and many other, the previous, but they were not as serious as this one has been. So I think out of science, we need to best look at this seriously and hear from our mate and people who are doing these issues to give us more details in coming days. So that,
I guess would leave the sciences and the issue of climate change to when we hear specifically from Malawi's disaster officials. But again, before we go, what you envisage will be left behind once the storm finally wanes? Maziko, what do you see happening?
In fact, thank you for bringing that, because even when I spoke with the Minister of Finance this morning, was Minister, what are you going to do? Because all the houses which have been affected, we're seeing in the picture, all of them, that weekend, and they're going to fall off. So it means these are disaster areas. People are not supposed to stay in those areas because those houses can collapse anytime. And that's what the huge cost which the government would do aftermath of the cyclone. And how are they going to take those people who are living in those areas to other safer places? Does the government have money? And those are private places. Others bought that places because it's in a Blantyre urban, where people bought those lands and building those houses. It means those places, they have to be found another place where they can build other houses. That is a huge cost which government has to bear. That's why maybe in the morning the minister was saddened that said, what am I going to do with the budget? My budget is already tight and these are private residences. I'm hoping maybe as the country will learn from other countries because we have seen in America, they have the hurricanes and they're able to manage it. But I know America is a rich country, but also other countries had the same. I'm hoping Malawi will also take a leaf from other countries on how the displaced can be supported. Because sadly, we have very young people who are supposed to go to school, others in secondary schools, others goes in primary school. It means all these young people will not be able to go to school. Others have lost everything, including their housing, and employed somewhere else. Where are they going to reside?
Very well.
Do we have the land where these people can go and live? So these will be some of the sad stories we'll live with after the cyclone.
Very well. Benjamin, take us home on this one. I know you mentioned earlier that there are people who knew Freddy was coming, but they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know where to go. And as it stands now, we don't know if Cyclone Freddy will have another change of heart and, pummel the area or the region again. And so what would you have to say to people who are in the way of the storm in your country?
I think now it has to be government enforcing the regulations that are there, because very volatile places are known, but people still choose to be in the way of those river banks and the very volatile places. When the government was saying that people should move, they knew exactly what they were saying, because they knew that these are very dangerous places. But now coming back to the area question, I think my concern now is when all this emergency relief has been done, there has to be some mid-term kind of things that should happen. My thinking, as Maziko has said, is about school-going children. Yeah. The schools have been damaged, but also those who are left have been occupied by the displaced people. So it means for the nearest, for the foreseeable weeks, there will be no schools in all the affected areas.
Indeed.
So I think something immediate has to be done. And my suggestion is that the government or any cooperating partners should come up with the emergency evacuation centers where people can move away from schools and go to those places, so that the schools should be freed for children to start attending school, for those schools that are still standing. And then for those that have been damaged, immediate remedy has to be found. But also issues of water water and sanitation, and so on and so forth, because have been heavily affected by
Indeed. Gentlemen,
yeah.
Gentlemen,
Sure.
I'm afraid we're out of time and we'll leave our conversation here for now. But be sure that I do appreciate your insight and your time on the square today. I'd encourage you to stay safe, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much.
Indeed, Maziko and Benjamin joined us from Malawi, one of the country's hardest hit by Cyclone Freddy. We wish our Malawian viewers the very best as they go through this phase. But remember, the country has declared a state of emergency to be able to kickstart some kind of rescue and relief for people who are affected by this. But they also need dire assistance. If you're anywhere around the world and you'd want to assist, the Malawian government has opened arms for that. My name is Kemini Amanor. Stay safe. Bye-bye.